At any moment, Cuban leader Raul Castro is expected to give a speech to mark the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution, and people there will be celebrating. But in South Florida, it's a day many Cuban Americans will never forget. CBS 4's Gary Nelson talked with some who see no reason to celebrate.
Fidel Castro rode to power, cheered like a rock star 50 years ago. He had run a dictator named Batista out of town and was hailed as a liberator.
He was like the hero of the moment.
MARIANA LARRAZABAL knew better. Castro's henchmen had assassinated her father on their way to power, and 50 years ago today,
that morning, around 6 o'clock in the morning, my neighbor called me and says, Batista left. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. I cried.
the fear and the celebration that followed the fall of Batista and the rise of Castro is memorialized in The Godfather Part 2, some running in jubilation, others running for their lives.
People were wild. People were celebrating. People were like absolutely out of control.
It was incredible.
Gladys Blanco was a kindergarten teacher. Her husband was the MC at the legendary Tropicana Club in Havana. The new regime took their jobs, took their property, their families' homes, and in the purge that followed, executed two of her uncles. One was an invalid.
He was in the hospital, sick, but still they didn't care. They moved him and they killed him in a wheelchair.
MARIANA LARRAZABAL had a little girl and a baby on the way when Fidel came to power. When she and her husband fled Cuba, they were allowed to take little more than their children and the clothes on their backs.
Everything important, everything stayed behind. I just put diapers in my luggage.
50 years later, Fidel Castro is a frail figure, having transferred formal dictator duties to his kid brother, who presides over an island bereft of liberty and rich in poverty. 50 years after a so-called Robin Hood was cheered to power, the promises of the revolution ring hollow.
With a new year comes a new administration and perhaps a new U.S.-Cuba relationship. After a half-century of policies that have failed to dislodge Castro and communism, Barack Obama is promising, well, change. In the Gables, Gary Nelson, CBS 4 News.
Again, Raul Castro is expected to speak at any moment. We have a team of CBS 4 News producers listening in. We'll have that story on CBS 4 News tonight at 11. Carrie, thank you. New tonight at 11, Raul Castro speaks out on the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. The leader of that revolution, Fidel Castro, was not at today's ceremony. And here in South Florida, Cuban Americans remember well the events that brought him to power.
¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva! ¡Viva Cuba libre! ¡Viva!
Raul Castro marked the 50th anniversary of the revolution with a speech in the city of Santiago. In the front row, the aging revolutionaries who have been there since day one. That was on January 1st, 1959, when Fidel Castro received a hero's welcome after toppling dictator Fulgencio Batista. 50 years later, Raul Castro speaks of growing difficulties for Cubans, blaming Cuba's problems on the United States. Here in South Florida, Cuban Americans remember the promises made 50 years ago.
He was like the hero of the moment.
MARIANA LARRAZABAL knew better. Fidel Castro's henchmen had killed her father on the way to power. And 50 years ago today,
that morning, around 6 o'clock in the morning, my neighbor called me and says, Batista left. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. I cried.
After taking power, Castro sent his enemies before firing squads, others to prisons. Thousands more went into exile, fleeing any way they could. In 1959, Gladys Blanco was a teacher. Her husband worked at the legendary Tropicana nightclub in Havana. They lost their jobs and all their property. Two of her uncles were killed, one of them an invalid.
He was in the hospital, sick, but still they didn't care. They moved him and they killed him in a wheelchair.
50 years later, Fidel Castro is old and frail, absent from today's celebration, and Cubans on the island and in South Florida await the final chapter of his revolution. Well, that last chapter may be about to unfold. Raul Castro says he's willing to talk to the incoming Obama administration about normalizing relations.
A gorgeous day here, this 50th anniversary of Batista's fall, Castro's ascension to power. Tell me about that day, that week in your life.
Well, it's been such a long time that it's like blurry in my mind. But I can tell you that it's the second. Today is the commemoration of the second saddest day in the last 50 years. Being the first one, the day Castro arrived, which I think was around the 8th of January. Today, really, the commemoration is that Batista.
What is happening
That's
here?
okay. That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry about that. That's
We never
fine.
get jets here.
But that's fine.
Good.
It's the wind.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
In reality, today we really what happened today was that Batista very cowardly left Cuba and opened the door for this gangster and his followers getting the power. So in reality, it's not that Castro started. Mm-hmm. It's the day that Batista left the door open.
Right. And that week, the week that Batista left, several days later, Castro rolls into town. What are you doing? You were how old then?
I was 20. 20? I was 20 years old. I had a girl, and I was pregnant with my second child.
And what were, as this is happening around you and these events are unfolding,
okay,
how fearful were you?
Very upset, because what we feared the most was that Castro would get in power. So that going back to that day, around 6, I went to sleep. Things were very bad already. With people were very unhappy with Batista, and everybody knew that something had to happen. So that morning, around 6 o'clock in the morning, my neighbor called me and says, Batista left. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. I cried because I knew that Batista leaving meant a disaster coming, okay? Around that week, or the first days, I don't know if as long as a week, but the first days were days of a big instability, rumors all over. My family, my close family, very sad because we knew who Castro was since he was young at the university. So most people in my extended family didn't care about that or decide to believe that Castro was going to change, and now he was Robin Hood. This is the reality. We were very hurt with that situation.
What did you do? What did you? I understand you were hiding in your.
Well, I stayed in my house because you didn't know what could happen. Everything. People were wild. People were celebrating. People were like absolutely out of control. So you don't know if you are out or you're driving, a bullet can hit you. It was really very, very. I think it was dangerous. Okay, so I stay in my house with my daughter. My mother went with me to my house and stayed with me. My husband wasn't there because he was a pilot and he was out of town. So we all fear that the worst was coming. my immediate family. But Cuba was totally celebrating, and everybody started talking, oh, Castro is going to go in power. And I don't know how many days, because as I told you, this is blurry in my mind, but like very soon he said that he was in power, and everybody approved that. So it was
They bought a bill of goods, didn't they? He masqueraded.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah, yeah. So when they start driving from Oriente to Havana, they come in this caravan of cars and people celebrating with them. These rosaries, wearing rosaries, and he was like, Robin Hood was nobody.
He was a rock star.
Right, he was like the hero of the moment. However, we knew that there was another Castro, another Fidel Castro.
You knew because he assassinated your father.
He was involved in the assassination because he's so coward, he wasn't physically there. That's why we finally learned. But he's part of the group. He was around, he was taking care of other things, so to finish with my father.
To what extent did you fear for your life from the Castro regime? To what extent did you
guess what? I think at that time that he wouldn't have done anything to me because I was the daughter of my father, and it would have been very obvious doing something to me. Now I see that he could have put me in jail if he wanted, but at that moment I never considered that he would dare to do that, to do anything to me or my family.
And what did he take? What did the Castro regime take from you? What did you lose?
Everything. Let me tell you, the day I left my house, I had the house like this house, and I'm coming back in half hour. I left the house with everything I had in my life. My piano, my titles of graduation of piano, I am a teacher, graduation of teacher, diploma, everything important, everything stayed behind. I just put diapers in my luggage and the absolutely necessary clothes to travel.
And left everything behind.
Everything. In fact, I had a ring that they took away from me when I was leaving. So you couldn't even travel with a ring. I had a perfume, which I love, and at that time I thought it was the best. Arpeggio.
Was it your wedding ring with you?
No, it was my graduation ring.
And what is your hope on this 50th anniversary? What is your hope?
I don't have any hopes of going back to Cuba. Cuba is a lost thing to me. I don't even think I will ever go back to Cuba. No.
And for Cuba, what is your hope?
My hope for Cuba would be, and for the Cubans, that something change when the Castro leaves, both Castros, that somebody can do something for them and establish some kind of democracy. But I personally don't think I ever will be able to go back to Cuba.
Do you think that you will live to see a free Cuba?
That's, in reality, I don't think Cuba is going to be completely free one day. It's going to be like a process, in my mind. And like to say something similar in my mind, like China, a thing that is changing little by little. So the answer is no. I will never see the Cuba that I left behind. No, not in my lifetime.
All right.
I was, but I don't play the piano anymore.
Okay, that's good, Gary. That's good.
My mother was a piano teacher.
Oh yeah?
Uh-huh.
In Cuba?
No. In Gainesville, Florida.
Oh my goodness.
In Gainesville, Florida, where I grew up, and I remember from the time I was a little boy. My sister.
Serious. Be serious.
My sister played the piano, and I'm a singer and an actor, like Rafael.
Oh.
And
Ask her a question, Gary.
but my mom. So, and you got your degree in Cuba in education, was it music?
Childhood education, and piano, music, everything that goes with.
And so you were you teaching? Did you get to teach, or did you?
No, I married very young, and I never.